Bismillah, Assalamu alaikum. In today's video, I'll be refuting yet another argument against Hadith preservation, namely, this is from artificial literary elements. Let's get started. So, here's the contention. There are a lot of artificial literary elements in a Hadith that are likely to have been made up. I'll give examples of what artificial literary elements means. Some examples of this include the age 40. For instance, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ receiving prophethood at the age of 40. Same to Prophet Musa ﷺ, who received prophethood at the age of 40. The events in the life of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ mirroring the events in the life of Musa ﷺ, the important events in the life of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ all happening on Mondays, and the ancestors of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ doing great things, and certain stuff in military history. Basically, symbolic things like this are unlikely to have happened, and hence they are likely to be made up, and hence the ahadith are likely to be made up. This is the contention. Now I'll get into the refutation. If you assume naturalism, right, then these things would be unlikely. So this is just based on assumption. If you believe Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a true prophet, what is the issue with any of this? Why couldn't Prophet Muhammad ﷺ started receiving revelations at the age of 40? Why couldn't his life's important events happen on Mondays? Why couldn't his lineage include ancestors who did great things? Even if you don't assume Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is a prophet, or you are neutral on that, I don't see the issue with any of this. What's the issue with any of this? As far as why couldn't the lineage of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ include ancestors who did great things? The military history point is actually a proof for Hadith preservation, and I actually have an entire video on that. Basically, the point is symbolic things. If you assume that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is a false prophet, then these symbolic things will seem unlikely. But if you are neutral about this, then to be honest, there's no real issue with this. And if you believe Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is a true prophet, what's the issue with any of this? Why could God cause these things to happen? This entire contention is just based on assumption. There is no argument here. Moreover, just to make this point, symbolic things happen in history all the time, and things that we can confirm actually happened. Just because something is symbolic, that doesn't mean it was made up. Now I'll basically quote a reference from a Western military historian refuting this contention, and then I'll give a specific example of a symbolic event that happened in history. So here's the reference. While Donner, and this is Fred Donner, many of you would know about him, is more credulous than North, another Orientalist, regarding the early sources, he still attempts to downplay various anecdotes in the historical record by referencing the concept of historicization. This notion postulates that while some accurate information may be included under a given theme, additional, spurious, or false material is placed there as well. This is just an assumption. While the concept is legitimate in generality, it becomes a tricky matter when one deals with actual situations. For example, Donner cites an incident related by Imam Tabri in which a few Muslim ambassadors, having arranged a meeting with the Persian emperor just prior to the Muslim invasion of Persia, are rebuffed by being given a load of earth to lay on the neck of the most noble of the representatives present. Intended as an insult, the Muslim would take this as a good omen for their future conquest. Now, just think about this point. Right, think about the specific example I gave here. The Persians were a highly arrogant people, right? And they were dominant for centuries. Why wouldn't they humiliate the Arabs, the Muslims who came there, who were generally seen as poor throughout Muslim history? What's implausible about any of this? Doesn't seem to be anything implausible about any of this. This is just a desperate argument from the Orientalists. Moving on, let's read the reference further. Donner's contention is that this account is most likely spurious, having been placed in the chronicle by someone because of its symbolism. The problem here is that Donner is assuming because of the symbolism that the story is probably false. However, it is quite possible, and I dare say probable, that the incident actually occurred, that it was seen as a symbolic moment after the Muslim conquest. In this context, part of Donner's contention is that too many events related in ancient documents are simply too miraculous to be authentic. And this brings us to the point in history that history is often more bizarre than fiction. This is an example of a weird event in the First World War that is accepted as authentic. Take, for example, another illustration from World War One aviation. In May of 1915, British Captain Louis Strange pushed his Martin Side S-1 to its maximum ceiling of 8,500 feet to engage a German two-seat reconnaissance plane over the French town of Menin. These were two aircraft, they were having an aircraft battle. The German observer fired off a few shots with a pistol at Strange's aircraft, so Strange and emptied the drum of his Lewis machine gun at the German plane. Unfortunately, this has no apparent effect, and because the Lewis gun was mounted above the top wing, Strange had to struggle to remove the drum to change it out. So it was quite a difficult situation. And this is where the really weird thing happened. In the process, he lost control of his machine, with his aircraft flipping inverted and tossing him from the seat. Strange, who had no parachute, was saved by clinging to the very Lewis gun's ammunition drum that he had just been struggling to disengage from the weapon. His plane went into an inverted spin, falling 5,000 feet as the British pilot tangled precariously, desperately struggling to get back into the cockpit. At last, he was able to pull himself into the seat and regain control of his aircraft with just enough altitude toward the trees of the forest below. So you can see this is quite a weird story, right? And it has a lot of difficulties, but and weird. It's really weird, right? But moving on, let's see the reason why this is actually accepted as authentic, or this is more likely to be authentic. Should we accept such a bizarre incident as genuine, while Strange indicates that the German pilot claimed to see have completely thrown from the cockpit and thus claiming an aerial victory? Strange is the only one to record this incident and 18 years after the fact. While unique and bizarre, listen to this. This incident has the ring of truth, partly in the way in which Strange relates it, and partly from the fact that Strange does nothing to embellish his combat record, having claimed a solitary aircraft downed in late 1914. While this does not provide us with a perfectly scientific certainty as to the event, it offers us enough to conclude that the action probably did happen largely as he described. Having said this, we must wonder why historians dealing with more recent history readily accept such anecdotal claims as this, but then quickly reject seemingly odd and improbable incidents as related in ancient history. So this is quite a bizarre events, but it is accepted as authentic for the reasons given here. Just because bizarre things are mentioned in historical records, that doesn't mean those bizarre things are made up. And this is a point this historian is making. Bizarre things happen all the time. This does not mean those things are fabricated. This is from the book The Generalship of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, page 13 to 14. So just because something is unusual and bizarre, right, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. But just to give another point, why symbolic things happen in history all the time, and just because something is symbolic, that doesn't mean it's fabricated. Let's look at another example. Mamluk Sultanate fought the Mongols at the Battle of Ain Jalut in 1260. This is a very famous and very important battle in Islamic history. Now, Ain Jalut is supposedly the ground where Hazrat Daud al-Islam killed Jalut. Hazrat Daud al-Islam was not very big physically, and Jalut was a very tall person, right? Now, so there is obvious symbolism here, because Mamluk Sultanate at that time was not very strong, and the Mongol Empire was basically a juggernaut. There is massive symbolism here. I don't think anyone will deny this. But think about this. Just because there is symbolism here, does that mean this battle didn't happen? No, it's actually massively well attested. No one in their right mind will deny this, that this battle took place. Just because something is symbolic, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Right? So symbolism or even something being bizarre does not show that something is unlikely. In fact, bizarre events happen in wars all the time, as the previous example shows, and symbolic events happen in history all the time. So to be blunt, this contention is dead. Inshallah, I hope you have enjoyed this video. I mean, to be honest, almost all of the Orientalist claims are really based on assumptions, nothing more. Inshallah, I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and share the video. Inshallah, keep doing more work on Hadith preservation. Till next time, Assalamu alaikum.